This time-lapse video deals with sketchbook prompts, and the prompt is given. Students will write down the definition, synonyms, antonyms, 5-word associations that are specific to them, colors, and patterns. Our response to words is never random. We all deal with our own experiences and we interpret them differently. My specific response to the word sticky has to do with extracting honey from a beehive, and I did not wear an apron that day. So I am using an apron from which I will draw, and I am drawing from life, so it's easier for me to manipulate that apron opposed to using a photograph. And you'll see how it changes in many ways. I try to always begin with at least 2 thumbnail sketches. I am laying down yellow because that was the association of color with sticky for me personally in my experiences dealing with honey, as well as the tile on my floor. So I'm covering it with chalk pastel first, and then I am laying in the drawing using a white piece of charcoal on top of the chalk pastel. So I am using the reference from life and manipulating it to work with my design. So as I am designing the page, I'm making sure that the image is extending off of the top of the page as well as the side of the page. And so as I flip my apron around, I'm trying to find a way to describe the form itself as well as creating an interesting design. So I'm dividing up the paper and moving that apron around so it works with me. So we do have quite a bit of rhythm within this piece already. Right now I am drawing using a Sharpie pen on top of this white charcoal, and I was really loving the detail of the buckle and how much form it has in a seemingly flat surface. So as I'm moving through this piece, you'll see that it takes quite a few different forms. And I'm trying to show my students how you can manipulate your medium and change your mind multiple times as you're creating your work. So right now in this stage, I am trying to fight the pastel, which is resisting the Sharpie, despite the fact that we are interested in the colors and the textures and the composition. At the end of the day, this is also an opportunity to really show your drawing skills. You've worked hard for them, and why not show off? The combination of strong drawing skills and a strong idea is unstoppable. And this is really what adds depth to your work. As you are thinking about your sustained investigation, you want to also be thinking about why you are making the decisions that you are making. One question will lead to another question, and when that question is answered, a new question will arise. One of the most important things to remember as you're drawing is you will revise many times. You are changing your mind constantly, and revision is extremely important for growth. As you make a mark, you will decide whether that mark is working, whether it is fighting, whether it is helping. And don't be afraid to change your mind. We all change our minds. It's the most natural thing you can do. When we change our mind, we're opening up a door for a new opportunity. And knowing how to embrace that and not fear that is crucial. And right now I'm looking for imagery that relates to my theme. So I found this image of flowers, and using the flowers, I'm cutting them up to create a tiling pattern. So everyone chose a pattern in which your image had an association, and mine was my tile floor. So my pattern was squares. So I found flowers which directly relate to my idea of the bees and the honey. And as I am slowly changing the scale of the tile, I'm laying it out to kind of see where it's going to go, how I'm going to lay it down before I start gluing things down. So I wanted the scale to change because I don't want it to be too dominating in the piece. And because this is so organic as is, adding this graphic element of a geometric form could really become a distraction. And you'll see that when I lay it down, it's not so much the shape of these tiles as it is the value change. So I have to go back and kind of knock it back because it starts to dominate the piece opposed to the apron itself. And it really was meant to be just kind of a secondary element to create interest within the work. I'm consciously trying to overlap areas of the apron to create some transparency and layering, which I think gives pieces quite a bit of depth. And because I'm staying within the yellow tonal range, I found this beautiful purple flower, and adding that complement is kind of enriching the color. So I'm moving out of the monochromatic stage by introducing this, as well as some of the greens that are in the tile. Just using a glue stick and a piece of white paper as my kind of scrap area to the left, so I'm not damaging my page that I've got all my materials laid on. Even though I am quite a messy artist, this is helpful for me because I know that I can kind of keep things at bay by having that close by. As important as it is to have a clean area to work, I also find it to be super helpful to have lots of supplies within easy reach. I'm using gesso, which was strangely translucent, where most gesso is opaque, and it actually gave a really nice effect, and I could still see quite a bit of the collage coming through, even though it was being knocked back because it was starting to fight the apron itself. So as I am layering this, I'm deciding what becomes a negative shape behind the apron opposed to the positive parts of the apron itself. I love gesso. I highly recommend it for anyone with experience or not. It's one of the most incredible mediums because we can use it to create a surface that accepts anything. Um, right now, I am waiting for that to dry and trying to go back into my idea as to what I'm doing, where it's working, where it's not working, watching that line move your eye through the entire piece and rethinking the design over and over and over again. As you work, you have one plan, and through just experience and as you're changing your mind, you will find that you revise constantly through a piece. And we think we have an idea, and it changes a million times, from our inception of that idea. At this point, I am trying to create a little bit of weight at the bottom of this piece. And so I'm darkening the values both behind the flower as well as in that apron itself, and trying to create a movement, so you're finding those details and searching for them, and your eye is constantly looking over and over and over again for what information the artist is sharing with the viewer. So I'm defining the bottom edge of that apron. I like the kind of mystery where there are clues that this is an apron, but we can't really see that much detail. We're just kind of given indications here and there to solve the puzzle. And I am using a paper towel to kind of blot that, and then using what's coming off the paper towel to create even more texture within that piece. So you can see that the original thumbnail on the left is what I used, and it's always good to do at least two, usually three or four, before you decide on the composition of your piece. And I start with a smaller square, and then I realize I have to keep opening it up so I could see more of the apron. It helps a lot to look back on it even at this stage to see my design, where I think in that first thumbnail sketch I wasn't showing the bottom edge of the apron, and looking back I can see that it really is important to show that because I don't think we have enough information to decipher the object. The watercolors gave me some problems, but the gesso provided an acceptance of the watercolors, which was pretty difficult to do at first. It wouldn't take, but the less water you use, the more opaque the watercolor becomes, and it accepts that medium and goes on top of the gessoed surface. So here I am trying to create some shapes because I have a lot of lines and a lot of texture, and there just wasn't balance with some shapes, and we need those negative areas for our eye to rest. So when things turn into chaos and there's too much to look at, we tend to turn away. So these, little areas of rest allow us to enjoy the areas that have texture, that have interest, and are just as important in terms of balance and weight. So this is a charcoal pencil that I'm outlining my flower, and I'm working back into the stitching details, trying to find a way to define and sharpen some of these edges. You can see the balance of that large yellow golden shape with this cool purpley blue background. And I'm using the pastel right on top of that gesso now, where you would never be able to use pastel on top of a collage unless you have that tooth of that gesso to accept it. Using my hands quite a bit to manipulate that paint, to move that texture, to lift some of that gesso off. You can see I'm going back and blocking out an area that felt too busy and was creating kind of confusion. Again, revision, revision, revision. You will constantly find yourself revising your work and allowing your ego to take a back seat for the sake of the progress. In actual time, this took approximately an hour to create from beginning to end, and will hopefully be the inception for a finished piece. So I hope you learned something today, and have fun. Go be creative. Bye.